I got a lot of my precision is in my left hand. His precision is in his right hand, and we've learned so much from each other. And James, I love it.
Kirk Hammett is the lead guitarist of Metallica, yet for over 40 years people have asked, in a band where every scream is remembered, why has Kirk's guitar voice so often been forgotten? While James Hetfield screams rebellion and Lars Ulrich commands like a general on a battlefield, Kirk Hammett remains in the shadows, letting his music speak for itself. Strangely enough, it's that very silence that makes him impossible to ignore. With no sex scandals, no violent addictions, and no media stunts, Kirk has survived in an era where many rockers thrived on noise and chaos. He lives like a ghost, obsessed with horror films, collecting mummies, and playing guitar solos that sound like they were written by pain itself. But is this quiet intensity a choice or destiny? What transformed a shy kid from San Francisco into the emotional backbone of one of the biggest bands in the world? And why, after more than 4 decades, does Kirk Hammett still feel like a stranger in his own band? Born on November 18, 1962, into a working-class family in San Francisco, Kirk's early life was marked by hardship and quiet struggle. His father, a merchant seaman of Irish descent, and his Filipino mother, who worked various part-time jobs, struggled to make ends meet. In their small suburban home, racial identity wasn't a celebration, it was a silent burden. Too Asian to be seen as white, too American to fit in with Asian immigrants, Kirk grew up with a face that didn't fit and a soul that didn't belong. Bullied and ignored, he withdrew into himself, avoiding sports and socializing. But he had a vast imagination, one ignited by horror films, monster posters, and the strange electric riffs coming from his older brother Rick's cassette player. Rick introduced him to Led Zeppelin, UFO, and Jimi Hendrix, sounds that stirred Kirk's silent heart. With money scraped together from selling toys and comic books, he bought his first guitar, a cheap Montgomery Ward SG, and a noisy Sears amp. It didn't matter how it sounded. The moment his fingers touched the strings, he knew he had found his voice. While other kids dreamed of being astronauts or cops, Kirk dreamed of being a ghost, silent, hidden, yet watching everything. In the world of monsters, screaming guitars, and shadows, a quiet genius was being born, and no one even noticed. By his teenage years, Kirk was no longer hiding behind a screen. He was practicing guitar obsessively, not for fame or money, but because music was the only thing he could control. In 1980, at just 17, Kirk co-founded Exodus, a fledgling Bay Area thrash band. They never released an official album during his time, but Exodus taught Kirk how to survive the chaos of live music, how to scream through his guitar in beer-soaked bars. Slowly, he carved a style uniquely his own, aggressive yet precise, fast but soulful, always with a haunting shadow behind every note. Meanwhile, a few hundred miles south, another young band was preparing to record their debut album, Metallica. But behind the scenes, tensions were rising. Their lead guitarist, Dave Mustaine, was spiraling out of control, consumed by alcohol, violence, and relentless clashes with the rest of the group. Then, on April 1, 1983, Kirk Hammett received an unexpected phone call from Lars Ulrich, Metallica's drummer. Without an audition or even a band meeting, they had decided to fire Mustaine, though he didn't know yet, and they wanted Kirk to take his place. The offer was clear and urgent: fly to New York immediately. They were about to record Kill 'Em All. Though Kirk still had dreams with Exodus, this was the only door open, and he didn't hesitate. A week later, he was in New York, plugging into an amp in the studio. A new chapter in heavy metal began, not with a scream or drumbeat, but with a razor-sharp riff, Hit the Lights. Ironically, when Kirk played his first note with Metallica, Dave Mustaine was still on a bus, unaware he had just been replaced in one of rock history's quietest yet most impactful coups. Calm and silent, Kirk didn't say a word. He simply adjusted his guitar and let the riff speak. From the very first notes of Kill 'Em All, Kirk Hammett proved he wasn't just a fill-in. He was the missing piece Metallica never knew it needed. Unlike the fiery, volatile Mustaine, Kirk brought something darker, colder, more haunting. He didn't shred for attention. he played to stir emotions. From Kill 'Em All to Master of Puppets, Kirk never fought for the spotlight, he let his guitar do the talking. Armed with a wah pedal and a soul full of scars, he crafted solos that weren't just musical, they were emotional outcries. Fade to Black begins like a quiet tear and ends in a scream of suffocated pain. In Creeping Death, his guitar becomes a march toward ancient doom, brutal and hypnotic. With The Unforgiven, he stripped away all showmanship, every note a breath of loss, memory, and something irretrievable. But the commercial zenith, and a turning point, came with Enter Sandman. A single riff, starting with a tight palm mute and erupting into nightmare-fueled thunder, stamped Metallica's sound into global consciousness. Yet behind that iconic solo stood a man who always felt on the edge. Kirk's playing was a fusion of manic speed and shadowed emotion. He didn't race like Mustaine or dazzle like Satriani. He played as if every note whispered the unspeakable. Influences from Hendrix, Michael Schenker, and Clapton bled through his aching bends and liquid legato. And always there was the wah pedal, his signature cry, like a buried scream released. But under all that sound lay a memory Kirk never escaped, the death of Cliff Burton. Cliff, his closest friend in the band, died in a tragic bus crash in 1986 while touring Europe. They had drawn straws for bunks, Kirk won, but gave his to Cliff. That bunk was crushed. Cliff died instantly. From that day on, Kirk never slept peacefully on tour. He barely spoke about it. At the funeral, he said little. Instead, he plugged in and played, solos that sounded like they knew tomorrow might never come. His sound changed forever after that night, deeper, slower, like a fracture that would never fully heal. Despite being Metallica's lead guitarist, Kirk Hammett was never at the center of the songwriting process. As the band moved past the success of the Black Album, the creative spotlight narrowed to just two names, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. They shaped the songs, wrote the lyrics, made the final calls and mixing, while Kirk, though still credited and still delivering blistering solos, became more of a player handed parts rather than a creator invited to build them. His voice in the studio and the meeting room faded, not due to lack of talent, but because he didn't fight for it. Metallica had become a band of two powerhouses and one quiet nod. Kirk was always ready, always last in line, soloing when asked, but rarely given the chance to lay a song's foundation. Over time, this diminished his artistic role, even as his passion and skill remained at their peak. The biggest blow came in 2014, when Kirk lost his phone, his personal treasure chest, containing over 250 original riffs meant for the next album. But what was lost wasn't just files, it was his final opportunity to reclaim a meaningful role in Metallica's creative engine. By the time they began recording Hardwired to Self-Destruct, the structure had already been laid by Hetfield and Ulrich. Kirk contributed little, if anything, and the finished album barely bore his fingerprints. His name was nearly absent from the writing credits. In a band that once claimed every member mattered, Kirk's silence slowly became the reason to push him further from the core. Fans now call him the Silent Soul of Metallica, a title that could be seen either as a quiet compliment or a gentle way of saying he no longer belonged. When asked why he didn't push harder to be heard, Kirk replied simply, "I don't like to argue. I just want to play guitar." On the surface, it sounds like an artist's mantra. But listen closely. It echoes like quiet resignation from someone who's been shut out too many times. And maybe that's why Kirk Hammett pours everything he can't say into every solo, the one place he is still fully, undeniably himself. Offstage, Kirk is far from the image of a rock god living large in mansions and partying into the night. When the lights dim and the music fades, he retreats into a world of mummies, haunted dolls, and vintage horror films. Kirk doesn't like parties. He avoids crowds. He hates conflict. Above all, he craves peace and quiet. While other Metallica members may have blown off steam with alcohol and chaotic backstage antics, Kirk often spent nights alone in hotel rooms, watching old horror flicks, sketching, or quietly strumming his guitar in the dark. What others saw as strange, he saw as sacred. He owns one of the world's largest horror collections: posters, masks, wax figures, artificial skulls, and once curated the It's Alive art exhibit, a display drenched in the obsessions of a childhood haunted by abandonment and isolation. But Kirk didn't just collect fearsome imagery, he lived among it, perhaps because it was the safest way to express his fears without getting hurt. Years after Cliff Burton's death, a close friend once said, "I'm not sure Kirk ever got over it, he just let it live inside him in his own way." Kirk Hammett has been married twice. His first marriage, to Rebecca Hammett, came in 1987, just as Metallica was exploding after Master of Puppets. But 3 years later, they quietly divorced. No children. No public explanation. Perhaps it was an early sign that, for all his talent and sensitivity, Kirk Hammett never quite fit into the real world. To him, love was like music, always beautiful, but not always meant to last. In 1998, Kirk Hammett met and married Lonnie Hammett, a woman outside the entertainment world. They lived quietly, far from the public eye, and had 2 sons together. For those who caught a glimpse of Kirk backstage holding his children, it was one of the rare moments when the reserved guitarist truly smiled. For a long time, he called family "my only peace." But not all battles are fought loudly, and not every war ends with a bang. No one knows exactly when the cracks in their marriage began. Maybe it was the relentless touring. Maybe it was because Kirk increasingly retreated into his own mind. He didn't cheat. He didn't explode. He just gradually faded from the relationship, the way he so often did from the world. In 2022, they quietly divorced. No headlines, no public statements, and no one seemed surprised. The one thing that may have felt it most was Kirk's guitar. There are songs he's written that never got released, emotions he only lets out when his wah pedal cries softly in the middle of the night. No audience, no spotlight, just him and the ghosts he's never put to rest. During an art exhibit, he once joked, "If I didn't play guitar, I'd probably open a monster museum." Then added, "The difference is, I did both." And maybe that's the truest image of Kirk Hammett, not a flawless rock icon, not a perfect man, but someone who wandered through life never raising his voice, letting his instruments speak everything he couldn't. If Metallica is a storm of steel that redefined heavy metal, then Kirk Hammett is the quiet wind that carried its soul. He was never loud, never demanded the spotlight, yet it was Kirk who gave Metallica's sound its depth, its emotion, its darkness, and its pain. For over 4 decades, he helped shape the sound of an era, not with speeches or battles for control, but through solos that made an entire generation fall silent and simply listen. Fade to Black, The Unforgiven, Creeping Death, One, Enter Sandman, all bear his fingerprint, the silent scream of a soul that was never heard through words. Many guitarists play faster than Kirk. Some are more technically inventive. But few can reach into the dark corners of a listener's heart the way he does, with aching legato, mournful bends, and the wah pedal that wails like unspoken sorrow. His influence ripples through generations of metal guitarists, from Slipknot to Trivium, Avenged Sevenfold to countless underground bands who name him with reverence, not for flash, but for his brutal emotional honesty. Kirk is living proof that you don't need to write lyrics, lead the charge, or dominate the studio to be the quiet heart that keeps a band's soul intact. In the world of guitars, he's often seen as the third face behind Hetfield and Ulrich. But in the hearts of fans, Kirk Hammett is the one who made them cry with Fade to Black, shiver at the thing that should not be, and feel their own pain echo through The Unforgiven too. In 2003, Rolling Stone ranked him number 11 on their list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. He's played on every kind of stage, from the clubs of the Bay Area to the roaring crowds of Sao Paulo, Moscow, and Wacken. But wherever he appears, people don't scream his name, they wait for his guitar to speak. And when it does, everyone understands, this is music that needs no words, because it's written by someone who has never truly been heard. Now in his 60s, Kirk Hammett still stands on stage with Metallica, hunched over his guitar like a man in prayer. His long curly hair now streaked with gray, his body no longer as agile as it was during the Master of Puppets era. Yet the fire inside him still burns, the same flickering, unwavering flame that fuels every solo, every bend, every haunting cry. There was no loud comeback, no grand solo career. Just Kirk, still playing, still silent, still searching for something only his guitar seems to understand. Certainly. Here's your provided text transformed into a well-structured and emotionally resonant paragraph. While other guitarists chased attention, Kirk Hammett quietly released a piece of his soul in Portals, 2022, a 4-track instrumental EP that sought no validation, pandered to no crowd. It didn't sound like Metallica. It sounded like Kirk, dark, cinematic, structured like Midnight Dreams, with each note shaped by instinct. Portals was perhaps the first and only artistic manifesto Kirk ever created solely for himself. I just wanted to create a musical space where I didn't have to ask anyone for permission, he said. By 2024, as Metallica entered the second year of their massive M72 World Tour, their most ambitious since World Magnetic, Kirk was still there, bowing low over his worn black guitar, sometimes appearing to dissolve into the stage itself. Performing in Hamburg, Paris, Gothenburg, Madrid, and Mexico City, where Metallica played 2 completely different setlists over 2 nights, was a brutal challenge for any guitarist. But for 62-year-old Kirk, it demanded not only stamina, but the will to survive the very music that once devoured him. When he flubbed the intro to Nothing Else Matters at one show, online mockery followed. But Kirk didn't respond. He bowed his head and kept playing. To him, mistakes weren't shameful. Pretending there was nothing left to say, that was unforgivable. Amid the whirlwind of the tour, Kirk quietly began working on his first full-length solo album, a world entirely separate from Metallica. Unlike Portals, this time he wouldn't be alone. He invited vocalists from across genres: classical, funk, progressive metal. "I don't know if it'll be a hit," he said. "I just know I need to finish it before I die." It was one of the rare raw declarations from a man who's spent a lifetime choosing silence over spectacle. In 2024, he also poured himself into Kirk Hammett, a photo book chronicling his personal guitar collection spanning over 40 years, not to boast, but to preserve. Every cracked fretboard, every forgotten name, every guitar that carried him through grief and joy was captured in images by Ross Halfin and published by Gibson in early 2025. The message was simple. I don't say much. The guitars speak for me. These are the ones that have spoken for me my whole life. Outside of music, Kirk remains deeply rooted in the eerie world he's always loved. He continues to attend horror events, curate the It's Alive exhibit, write about cult cinema, and support young B-horror filmmakers. While many rock legends seek fame, Kirk seeks only to be felt, even by a few. He avoids headlines, isn't active on social media, and rarely appears on TV. But every week, he's still on stage, playing songs that have haunted him for decades. His solos in The Unforgiven or Welcome Home, Sanitarium, no longer slice with youthful sharpness, but they ache more, slow, heavy with memory, sounding like the voice of a soul that has witnessed too much. In 2025, as Metallica continues its North American tour, Kirk remains a constant presence, carrying his wah pedal, his soft smile, and a soul that never left where it all began. No one expects Kirk to shine like a frontman. They wait for him to step out of the shadows, because only he can lead them back to where Metallica truly started, a place where emotion isn't shouted, but played. In a band defined by Hetfield's roars and Ulrich's pounding drums, Kirk Hammett stands as a paradox. He doesn't fight for attention, yet remains unforgettable. He steps back, bows his head, and lets his guitar say all the things he's never spoken aloud. From a bullied, mixed-race kid in San Francisco to the man behind immortal solos like Fade to Black, The Unforgiven, and Enter Sandman. From the trauma of losing Cliff Burton to the bitter silence of being sidelined in Metallica's songwriting process, Kirk chose to keep playing. And through music he survived. He may not have charted Metallica's path, but he's the one who kept its soul intact. When James screams and Lars strikes, it's Kirk who holds the band's heart together, with solos like muffled cries on a battlefield. Maybe that's why, after more than 40 years, he's still here, still playing, still writing, still believing that you don't need to shout to be heard. In a world of giant egos, honesty and a guitar can still be enough. So, what do you think of Kirk Hammett's journey? What is it about his playing that leaves you speechless? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. And if you too believe that sometimes silence is the loudest music of all, don't forget to like and subscribe to discover more of these great silent souls.